Hey, what's going on, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to the Pitlane Podcast, episode number 74 today with usual host myself, Aarav, Callum, and Tom, and we're here to discuss testing number 2. We're going to kind of go team by team order today, and then we'll kind of just give any kind of general gist. There are a few little bits and bobs of news around testing to kind of wrap up. But yeah, before we get into it, do remember that we are on audio version now on either iTunes or SoundCloud. You can search the Pitlane Podcast on the podcast app on iTunes, or you can just catch us in SoundCloud. Both are linked right in the description below, so if you do want to just listen to the audio or on the go, you can download it via that. And obviously remember to use Pitlane F1 at GT Omega if you want to try and help us out there, if you want to get anything from there. But let's get into it then, and we'll start with Mercedes then, guys. So Merc, well, they've done a Merc. Mercedes, very consistent, very looking good, no dramas. I would say casual Merc as well in terms of not running very fast tyres as well. They kind of just ran the mediums a lot of the time and kind of just didn't bother with the hypersofts, which a good point is they're not going to get used at Spain, so maybe why bother doing them in terms of, unless you want some like chart-topping times like maybe McLaren do to try and hide how poor their testing, well, not poor, rocky their testing's been. But Merc, what are we saying, guys? Just looking very, very good, really.
Yeah, it's like what you said. Towards the end of the test, they were using medium tyres only, just doing long runs, and that proves how comfortable Mercedes are feeling. Lewis Hamilton saying after the first test that he could go to Melbourne, so he didn't really feel that the second test was needed. Maybe a bit of a walk into the unknown without the second test, but yeah, on balance, it does seem that Mercedes are looking like on the front foot at the moment. But as like last year, Lewis Hamilton was pointing fingers at Ferrari in 2017. In 2018, Hamilton has been pointing fingers at Red Bull, saying they're the threat this year. So once again, I think Mercedes are trying to deflect a bit of I don't know, hype, a little bit of pushing them forwards, and obviously that's what Mercedes want to do. They want to turn up at Melbourne and try and surprise everyone, but I think after 2014 onwards, I don't think they're surprising anyone. But it's interesting that Hamilton is the one that's always pushing this forward, that they're not the fastest, when in reality, you look at the testing times, especially long run pace, and Valtteri Bottas, he was looking mega quick.
I think no one's sipping the Kool-Aid anymore. I think everybody knows exactly what is up with Mercedes. And I think, if you look at the GPS, which is what everyone was saying, look at the lap times, their race pace, at least, from what we know, is very impressive. So they were favourites anyway, in my opinion. They were always going to be the favourites going to the season after winning the championship, So, yeah, nothing really new. I think, obviously, they'll be hoping to have a bit more of a better car underneath them, not as much of a diva as last year, which so far that definitely seems the case. But then again, if I think back to last year, they never realised how much of a diva their car was until they rocked up at Melbourne. So, we'll see. Hamilton claimed the track was really easy because of the resurfacing. You can't really read into the lap times too much in terms of comparing them to last year. I think when we go to a proper racetrack like Australia, which is a street circuit, one that hasn't been resurfaced, I think we'll see what happens, because I think it will change a bit in terms of what we've been seeing in Catalonia. So overall, exciting. We're on the countdown now, less than 2 weeks, so I'm looking forward to it. But at the same time, can't help but think Mercedes are going to be the leading team going into Australia.
Yeah, I kind of fear they might slap it. We'll see. But yeah, definitely all the number crunchings kind of point towards they're going to still clearly have that advantage, and they've done so much work to, yeah, as Tom said, change it from a diva of a car. And if they sorted that, then really kind of it's almost like shouldn't be really surprised to any of us really if they rock up with a very good package, because if you can just fix that problem, that was really their only issue of like dialing in the setup every single race. But then moving on, so I guess we'll move to Red Bull then. In allude to Hamilton pointing the finger at Red Bull. Red Bull have had obviously a lot of stronger preseason testing anyway, just because they obviously launched their car earlier. They had a bit of a slow start in week one. Obviously, the rain didn't help, but in terms of like laps compared to everyone else, they just didn't bother to do many. And then obviously a few little foibles here and there with the oil, issue for Max, and then Max span it at the end. Testing week 2, positive signs here and there. The reason why Hamilton maybe pointed fingers was, I think, was it Ricardo that set a really good lap time? I think on day number 2 or 3 or whatever it was.
Nice.
One of the days.
One of the days.
Yeah, setting a banger lap time that, obviously, unfortunately, every single we do that. I feel like all of us, you guys listening and us three included, every time you think about testing, it just doesn't mean too much in terms of lap times. But every single time, the headline is just like the lap time, and it's just kind of like we need to calm down a little bit. But
we repeat it every year, don't we?
Yeah,
We're
we
always
do.
like, no, look into lap times.
You can't because
especially this year, like Tom.
I'll give you an example. So everyone's raving about Mercedes, and rightly so, because their race pace is very good. But we're talking about their faster compounds. Mercedes actually ran the Ultra Sauce. The only time that they didn't run was the Hypers because they didn't actually have any allocated. They weren't interested in running them.
Yeah, the teams can choose.
Hamilton's best lap on Ultras from memory is an 18.4, whereas Vettel's lap was a 17.1 on Hypers. You don't gain 1.3 on a step down of a compound. So obviously, if you're reading into lap times, then logically Ferrari are the fastest, but we know that's not the case. So yeah, you can't read into it, can you? You really can't.
Not at all, nah. And I think Merc, out of any team, would be the kind of team to be like, let's just turn the engine down a little bit. Let's just not give our hand away fully.
I'd like to see them dials just to see where.
Yeah,
it was all up and down because there was one test day where I think Bottas did like 334 and Hamilton did 309 or something on the
That's
same
interesting
day.
you say that actually, because a lot of people are looking at the top speeds and they're looking at them like, hold on a minute, Mercedes aren't going anywhere near as full whack as last year, so there's got to be a few questions here.
Yeah.
But in terms of
Red
Red Bull,
though, compared to last year.
Yeah, they are. They really are quick.
3:35, then the Catalunya pit straight, and apparently not a full whack. That is pretty scary.
That's
I think
that is.
Partly that would be also like the amount of like slingshot effect they get with the new tarmac off the last corner in terms of like the drive maybe that they get. Because the Halo would have added weight obviously, so kind of just puts into kind of show like different variables at play. Makes this testing very kind of, I don't know, like you said it just before we started recording, Cal, that literally like it's been a very lulled testing kind of and we were kind of discussing what was going on and Tom was just pointing out like nothing's really happened like major to kind of pinpoint. And I guess maybe it's kind of all these different things that don't mean a lot. It kind of just means that no one else is really getting too stuck into it. It's like everyone's kind of, I know we just said about people reading too much in Times, but away from the headlines to just kind of clickbait articles, it's kind of like, let's just wait till Australia.
Do you know what it is as well? I think, obviously, this is we're going into 2018 now. You've got to think, every year since the introduction of hybrids, obviously the first year of hybrids, there was a lot of discussion about reliability. And ever since, obviously, then Honda kind of carried on that talk about reliability because they were just terrible in the back of the McLaren. We'll talk about this a bit later. But obviously this year, in the back of the Toro Rosso, Honda's not had any troubles. Renault's not really had any troubles, apart from slightly with McLaren. Mercedes cars, I think, have been perfectly fine. So overall, there's not been any talk about reliability, and also plus the teams have been pushing forward. Engine manufacturers have been pushing forward reliability because of the engine cap. So it's kind of just put a bit of it's just kind of saturated the interesting part of testing. I think that's why almost Hamilton was a bit like, let's just go to Melbourne. Because we're a bit bored now, to be honest, of just turning laps. Plus, can I just point out how many laps, for example, Sebastian Vettel turned even in one day, like 188 laps. That's 3 race distances. These drivers are machines.
I don't know, like, well, I really want to know what Vettel was like after he came out of that car that day.
His neck must have been dead.
But just in terms of like his mood, like it was like, so did you like enjoy that? Like, was that good for you? Like, it's just like so many. I don't know. I always feel like maybe he got like tunnel vision of just like I must do a lot of laps. I need to make sure this car is bulletproof and doesn't break away. When I'm maybe leading a race or whatever. Potentially because obviously last year there was a lot of reliability issues towards the end for Ferrari. Let's hope the spark plugs are maybe some M&S spark plugs and not Aldi spark plugs, something like that. But I mean, you brought it on to Vettel, so I think only good we move on to Ferrari then, because really actually there wasn't actually much noise from Red Bull per se. A little bit of noise from Ferrari in terms of away from the actual testing times. The thing I was interested about, and kind of jokingly in a way, is obviously we've now maybe seen the jokes, those of you at home, about Ferrari vaping out of the pit garages, because when they start, and it's not just Ferrari, every Ferrari works team smokes quite a lot out of the engine now. That's due to a tech reg change where the oil breather, which is basically like, in the simplest way, the oil that gets used in the engine, they just have to exit it somewhere. And it used to kind of be, you can do what you want with it. But now they have to mandatory put it out the back. And every Ferrari engine seemingly uses a lot of oil compared to every other car. And so they smoke away when they get start up. the funny thing was, I'm thinking, could that possibly kind of happen a little bit on the race start? When you're sat there, ticking over, like, especially the two Ferraris at the front. Will there be like some sort of smoke screen deployed when they get going? So like,
there's no reason to, because it's not a car start-up, is there? So
yeah, no, but you do get like occasional little smokes from the engine and whatnot sometimes. So I'm just like, it'd be quite funny.
All the Ferrari-powered engines, it's like a smoke cloud.
Yeah, yeah. Can you imagine like Alonso behind like one of the Ferraris?
Can't see shit.
And then race starts like, wait, what? I can't see crap.
It's interesting that things come about, to be honest, because obviously it is only Ferrari. Usually, when we see a tech rank change like that, usually it happens to all teams or all engine manufacturers. So it's interesting that Ferrari.
Definitely.
A few question marks on that one.
Yeah, it was an interesting tidbit that they use a lot more oil than every team, which is kind of like, okay. In a way, I kind of thought, oh, that's kind of, actually in a funny way, kind of typical Ferrari, maybe you think, in terms of their engines and whatnot, just in terms of like the history in the hybrid era. But Ferrari, turned a lot of laps. Kimi set that good lap time at the end as well, along with Vettel. He didn't turn that many laps though compared to Vettel, obviously, and he kind of took Alonso's thunder, because Alonso was fastest, and then Kimi came in and ruined it.
Typical Kimi. Well, Kimi's been looking strong,
again,
but obviously
not too much to really talk about with Ferrari, because Vettel's kind of played kind of the opposite of, well, no, really the same with Hamilton, but he's not pointed fingers, but he's just kind of gone, just focusing on ourselves, kind of doing what Ferrari did at the beginning of last season, kind of going very silent in a way, in terms of like major quotes and stuff like that.
I was watching 2017 testing last year. Do you know the videos that are on YouTube?
Right, yeah,
and Kimi Räikkönen was the fastest on the last day of testing. So obviously that's nothing to look into on how quick Kimi has been this year's testing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Kimi was nowhere compared to Seb last year. So it's we can't really pluck in terms of the lap times from Ferrari, but you have got to, hands down, got to say they've got their reliability nailed. Let's see if they can keep that reliability all season when parts do become a bit strained. Because if you do 3 Grand Prix distances, like even with certain teams, they've been getting slight issues, but when you turn that many laps on maybe one set of engine components on a brand new car, you you expect a few little niggles anyway. So it's almost good that they're coming across.
That was only 3 race distances though. 3 engines for 21 races. I can't see it. I know at some point, I honestly, if I was a betting man, I would stick a tenner on and just say every team is going to take an engine penalty at some point, because it's absolutely impossible. They make 21 races with 3 engines. Not even Mercedes are going to pull that one off. At least one of their cars will take a penalty. I'm telling you, there's no way it's happening.
Yeah,
absolutely no way. Like we already mentioned last podcast how Renault might take some tactical penalties early on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
if like
I cannot see it happening. That is just it's mad to me, that rule. It makes no sense, because you know it's not going to happen. But so far, I mean, they've definitely shocked people with the lack of, or should I say, amount of reliability thus far, with very little to no breakdowns, with the exception of McLaren and the odd Verstappen issue, and also plenty of Sauber spins. Other than that, it's been, like I said, very nothing test. Personally, I'm going to stick by my prediction with Ferrari in terms of, I would be surprised if they are the closest team to Mercedes, because I still think it's going to be Red Bull this year at the minute.
Well, you mentioned McLaren, so let's move on to McLaren. I mean, maybe what the fans want to think is the next team along, and kind of probably the more interesting team, just for the unfortunate reasons which we thought we were going to get away from for 2018 with McLaren. But I mean, a shaky test, let's say. It's not a horrendous test for them, but it definitely was not as they wanted, with just stoppages left, right, and centre. I mean, I remember, Tom, you linked the live interview that F1 did. They were doing with Gasly, and as they were doing it, the McLaren slowed down in front of them. It just baffles me. Like, in a funny way, like I joked about it on Twitter. I think people thought I was serious about, Honda being like great in terms of performance. I don't seriously think they are going to be. I think, even the reliability is going to be definitely put straight into question when they actually get going. But it's just funny to me how testing's gone for the two different, used to be kind of partnership. And McLaren, I don't know. It's kind of like someone like they've just forgot how to build a car that just functions. Like,
well, this is the thing. I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter about this, and you think prior to the Honda era, did McLaren ever have bulletproof reliability?
Well,
in
look
the
at
first
2012.
place?
Like,
Exactly.
they had definitely probably the fastest car overall.
I could think of the Hamilton retirement in Singapore, Hamilton retirement in Abu Dhabi, Button retirement in Monza. They're three come to mind straight away in 2012.
People forget a lot of things about McLaren. We were speaking about this off camera the other day, and I'll bring it up in a second. But first of all, has everyone just forgotten 2014, for example, where they were average at best, maybe, with a Mercedes engine?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
In the hybrid era. It's like everyone's just thinking, oh, it's a Honda. But in 2014, they did absolutely nothing. And I told the Arab this. McLaren never won because they got disqualified 10 years ago. If you keep that in mind, McLaren haven't won a Constructors in like 20 years. There's a reason behind that. McLaren haven't won a Drivers' Championship since 2008. There's also a reason behind that. And they've just never been the most reliable of cars, to be honest. And this is going back 20 years. So, it's just something they've always had, to be honest. And this goes hand in hand with the argument and some of the things that were brought up. And Gasly actually said this in the video that I linked, which is him being interviewed by Will Buxton. Basically, the reason why the Honda partnership didn't work with McLaren, and it's working with Toro Rosso, and I think it is going to work quite nicely for them, is because McLaren were telling Honda what to do and forcing them to do what was best for McLaren. The difference with Toro Rosso is Toro Rosso have just said to Honda, do what you've got to do and give us the final product. So Honda have, turned up this season, and they've been able to put in the third most laps behind Mercedes and Ferrari. So no coincidence there in terms of, obviously, Toro Rosso knew what to do. They just let Honda get on with it. Honda have delivered an engine. Okay, it might mean that Toro Rosso can't have their car as tightly packaged as other cars, but at the end of the day, they've got a car that can turn laps. Lots and lots of laps, as Gasly proved.
Interesting you bring that up, actually, about tightening up a car. Did you two watch the James Allison video of the Mercedes comparing the 2017 to the 2018 cars?
I heard about it, but I did not. But apparently there's a lot of interesting facts in it.
On a side note, James Allison is a brilliant presenter. He was really good in the video. But he was talking about tightening up a car. And you can see why McLaren were pushing it, because apparently it saved a substantial amount. I think 0.4 of a second you can save by tightening up the back of that car.
It was 0.25, a quarter of a second.
It was around that point. But it's still a substantial amount. Like, even that amount of a second is huge in Formula 1 terms. So you can see why McLaren did want to obviously force Honda into this ideology of, can you tighten it up a little bit? Can we just
size zero?
It's almost like I don't know. I'm just going to use a woman that's at a size 8 is trying to squeeze into a size 6. It's just not going to work. It's just going to go wrong. Something's going to snap. Something's going to break. And obviously that's what happened for McLaren for 3 years straight. So obviously, and then they pointed towards the dress that was wrong rather than the woman that's trying to get in it. If that's a right way of thinking about it.
The complex thing to this as well, we brought up before the speed traps. You look at Toro Rosso, they're right in the money. Gasly got, I think, 3.35 at one point or something like that. He was right up there. Meanwhile, McLaren are still roaming the 3.10, 3.11s. So
and there's I saw arguments when I jokingly posted about the speed traps and just made a little Honda in joke sort of thing. But the thing is, so Toro Rosso did bounce up and down from the pecking order. But consistently, McLaren were last. No matter what the other teams were bouncing around, Merck were second last at one point on one day of the speed traps because they really just didn't bother turning their engines up and whatnot. But no matter what McLaren at every speed trap point were just way down there. So it's kind of no matter what you say about it not being very accurate, it's accurate enough in terms of just seeing clearly there's a pattern of McLaren just really weren't, for some reason, I don't know why they didn't turn it. It's not like the Renault engine is horrendous, because Renault and Red Bull are proving it. So I just don't get.
It's an interesting argument because we said our review of me the other day. You look at the way the Renault engine works. The only two teams that have had issues with engine related was Verstappen, who had a few issues.
Yeah.
Who got limited running, and also obviously McLaren. Renault have not. Why is that? Because obviously, going back to the whole Honda telling them what to do argument, obviously Renault, they design their own engine, so they design their car.
Yeah, obviously the works team's always going to have a
advantage. Hence why we know that the Renault isn't the slimmest of cars also. But
isn't that one of the reasons why McLaren went with Honda, though?
Yeah, but then ironically, now we're kind of finding out that McLaren were a bit too kind of they didn't realise you kind of have to have a partnership rather than, okay, you're working for us.
But
Exactly.
that's the thing, though.
That's
Yeah.
the key note.
Yeah.
I think if
It wasn't a
McLaren wanted to
partnership.
succeed in that sense, they needed to make McLaren engines for the McLaren
Yeah.
to know
We've
every bare bone
this,
of
we
it.
said this before. It has to be
But even like
their
to
own
that-
engine.
Yeah, but even for that point, like Red Bull in the last year or so, I feel like they have worked as hard as they can. Obviously, they're still quite stubborn as a team, but I think they've worked hard in terms of trying to understand how they best can work the Renault engine with their car. And you've seen the benefits, especially in the last year. Just making everything up basically in the aero department, despite the engine still being a little bit lacking compared to Ferrari and Mercedes. So yeah, I think it's maybe going to be that case of this season. McLaren maybe going to have to rapidly also do the same. Maybe if they can get away from the car foibles and then also work on just kind of doing the Red Bull style, kind of taking a bit more note of what the Renault engineer is saying to us in terms of running the engine and whatnot. Yeah, it's a very weird, complex situation. Also, on that note, with Red Bull working with the Renault engine, did you see that whole thing about Toto Wolff was like, I don't know why he made the remark. It was kind of odd, trying to throw a little spanner in the works. But he kind of made a remark about he thought Red Bull made a mistake not having the same fuel supply as Renault, and that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And
I can't see why Toto Wolff.
Yeah,
was
I don't see the
to be
reasoning. I
honest.
see the point he's making because it's sort of half true in terms of so in terms of the fuel mixture can actually do a lot for performance. Ferrari have really bragged a lot about it with Shell in terms of what they've been able to do with their V-Power fuel.
Same with Mercedes and Petronas, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's actually really bonkers engineering if you think about it in chemical engineering way in terms of the way they can do the fuel, and actually it really gains you can gain a tenth or so maybe in the fuel, maybe even more. I don't know the exact figures, but yeah, it was an odd one for Toto Wolff just to come out like that because. In contrast, Hamilton's, Bottas doesn't say anything. Hamilton's been pretty chill. He's kind of gone, Red Bull are pretty good. But then Toto Wolff's just coming out. And usually Toto Wolff he's not a loudmouth team principal, is he? So it's kind of odd for him to be like, Red Bull have made a mistake there, in my opinion.
He's usually quite reserved in that respect.
Yeah.
So it's usually Christian Horner that's piping up.
Exactly.
Well,
he has piped up as well about other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The piping up is hot. The pipe is hot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think people might be sick of us talking about McLaren, because McLaren has basically been the hot topic of this podcast ever since we started this podcast.
Yeah,
So
but it's just because they're the only
but the problem
team
is, this is the only thing we can speak about. Yeah, McLaren are just comical. Look at their pit stops. You see that pit stop that they had?
It's beyond comical. It's just get a grip. Just get a grip, please.
It's like McLaren, what did they do? They dropped the car in a pit stop. They also put the tyres on the wrong side. They tried to screw the tyre on the wrong way.
That was a bad.
It's
bad
very
pit
simple.
stop.
At the end of the day, if you look at it, there are some tweets floating around. If McLaren underperform this year, do we really consider them a big team anymore, or are they like another Williams?
No, they're another midfield team.
Yeah.
Because it's getting to a point now where since 2012 they haven't really had a competitive car. It's a long time.
Well, it's 2013 they went the wrong direction. 2014 they didn't make the right car, and then 2015 through to 17 it's just been a shambles, and this year it's just. Can they return to where they were?
I genuinely thought they were getting somewhere towards the end of 2016 because it seemed like they were finally getting with the Honda engine and it was all going well. And you think, okay, going into 2017 they can make something happen, but it turns out that 2016 blueprint they had for the engine development combined with the car was actually coming to an end. So they had to start fresh, and that's where the issues occurred last year.
Yep.
So
you can't forget though, in 2014 they did get a podium. They got how many? I think one podium.
Yeah, I mean they got one in the first
They
race.
won in the first race with K-Mag.
But then it's like they started off right, and then literally this hybrid era, they just haven't gone right since.
Well, yeah,
And
other
that's what
teams
it
just
is.
outpaced them so fast in terms of R&D.
The first race just means nothing. It's as simple as that because you just can't read into it.
Yeah, to be fair, Kimi Raikkonen won the first race in 2013.
Yeah, I mean, I remember,
Lotus.
I told Arav as well the other day, in 2012 it was McLaren front row and then Mercedes second row and Red Bull and Ferrari nowhere to be seen. And then look how the season ended. So, you just can't read into these things. I just think overall McLaren, I do think they have a much better car than people think. Even though, in a way, I still don't 100% believe the words that just came out of my mouth. I do think there is a good car there. Surely there has to be a good car there, because otherwise there's trouble. If it's unreliable, fair enough. But if at least they can say, okay, our car's actually fast, unlike with Honda where it just was dog shit slow. At least now it's actually quick. It's just unreliable.
I need to see some major upgrade for Australia to be convinced, because like their car, it's good still, but it definitely, you can see areas where they're definitely lacking. So it's kind of odd, like the way they've gone about it in terms of just like the side pod, bargeboard area. They've got the 6 vortex generators, but they've just not really done too much intricate work there compared to even just like Renault, for example, Renault Works, and it's just kind of like, is it really as good? So it's kind of like what you just said, Tom. Like, you can't believe the words you're saying. Kind of like, I'm yet to be fully convinced now, because I was convinced, but then I'm like, maybe
Well, I think
not.
this is the thing. I'll give the example is they've broken down. Yet, for example, in between those breakdowns, like for example, what was it? The third day of test 2, Van Dorn clocked up 151 laps. So
Yeah.
it is there. And then, like for example, on day 3 of test 2, Van Dorn did 151 laps, and the next day, Alonso, albeit a breakdown in the morning, still did 90 plus, and also not just that, he clocked up the second fastest lap in the 1:17s. So, it's still good. I mean, Alonso's lap is only 6/10 drift of Vettel, so realistically, if they go into Melbourne 6/10 drift of a Ferrari, regardless of where Ferrari may be in the pecking order, that is
top 10, maybe.
That could be a 4th best team, because I've had this sort of debate on Twitter today, who is going to be in that battle. But we'll sort of move on to that now. But I think in terms of the Toro Rosso McLaren debate, I think that's about it. We'll find out more soon. Obviously,
Hope that's the last of it.
McLaren have a big car update scheduled for Australia, so there could be a brand new car. Who knows? So
we'll see.
I think personally, I'd like to talk about Renault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've already started, like we said right at the start, their car was incredibly basic. But you could just see towards the last couple of days, they just started to bring a few bits and pieces, and their car is just starting to come together. And to be fair, I've got to say, I know you can't read into the laps. However, they impressed me. No reliability trouble, and they got a lot of laps in. They got, like I said, we still agree they've got 2, if not the best driver pairing on the grid, 2 very solid drivers. And I do believe their car is an evolution of last year's. I think, and that's a positive step for them to take. So I think they're going to be well within that battle for best of the rest behind the top 3. So I think
they've been quiet, haven't they? They've just been silent but deadly in a way.
I mean,
not like a fart, but
I don't know if you two saw it, but there's actually been a lot of talk, like looking at the data, that Haas might actually be...
I was going to speak about
Haas. I was going to say this.
They might actually they might be the ones challenging Renault for that best of the rest spot.
I had a Twitter moment come up saying the American-based F1 team looking like they might have made a step forward this year.
Well, at the end of the day, right?
You look at it and you go, mate, they might have.
Let's be fair, they copied Ferrari's car.
Exactly, it's just a Ferrari car.
The difference is, in 2017, obviously it was new regs, so it wasn't... They did well to do what they had to do, to say there was no past thing they could sort of copy off or get a baseline.
Yeah, they copied some features from Ferrari's 2016
car. Obviously, in 2016's car, that was also their debut car. So really, this is the first year where they've actually got a proper baseline to follow.
They've got a proper chance
to
evolution.
Yeah,
they've pretty much gone with a Ferrari car. Now, to be fair, if you can do it, well, not, I mean, who wouldn't go for it?
Exactly.
It's controversial. But
look, that's the advantage they have with the relationship they have with Ferrari. So
they have something that is a proven formula. So, I think I think they're going to be much better than where they were this time last year. Put it that way. I think they've got themselves back in the mix. And I genuinely, I put a tweet out earlier. We won't talk about predictions in this video, but they are in a better state of affairs. And if you look at McLaren, you look at Renault, you look at Haas, Toro Rosso. I personally think the Honda isn't going to be as underpowered as people think it might be, because it just looks like they've got what they wanted. So, that midfield fight is going to be brutal this year.
Yeah, Haas do look... This is where you think that Force India are the worst off here, because Haas look quietly confident, Renault look quietly confident, McLaren are a question mark, Toro Rosso are kind of a question mark as well.
So I think McLaren, I think their pace is there. It's their reliability that worries me with McLaren. I think they've got good enough pace.
We've got to think Haas... They could always still pick up solid points. Even obviously they had their off weekends, and when they had an off weekend, they were appalling. They would both cars knocked out in Q1, sometimes even last, be absolutely nowhere in the race, getting in stupid incidents.
No, but they would recover in the race a lot. Often.
Well, sometimes sometimes they would. Obviously, sometimes they just hitting it or started hitting into people. But
here's what I would propose.
Interesting.
We should delve into Williams and Force India, because I've got nothing tells me or nothing screams at me why they should be anywhere near where they were last year.
Here's a little stat for you that I read on Twitter earlier. Out of all teams that improved, and this is obviously a huge caveat on every different condition possible, but Williams improved by 0.7 seconds from 2017 to 2018. McLaren improved by 3.4 seconds.
Well, here's the thing: if you read that, I think there's a graph that F1 tweeted out. All the teams that were lower last year, so Sauber, McLaren, Haas, for example, the bottom three.
Yep.
They've all improved the most.
Williams could be at the back.
So Williams are last, and Force India haven't improved that much either.
Nope.
Force India apparently have a big upgrade for Australia coming. And to be fair, Force India is a team where they've done it before. If it's really going bad for them, they'll just bring in a new car mid-season if they have to.
Yeah, the B-spec one they did
2015.
2015,
when you look at Force India, you're like, okay, they're struggling now. It's not to worry because they will do something about it. But at the minute, with Williams... there's nothing really.
Look, they have two very bad drivers, and
Kubica got so much running in as well, and he's not even a proper driver. Like there was a day where Kubica was scheduled to drive, and he said, "Listen, I'm not driving because I'm not actually a driver. Give it to one of the guys." I mean, Sirotkin's done better than he's running, and here's his rookie year. I don't know.
Shocking, isn't it?
Williams are just kind of all over the place.
And obviously Martini now. I think since the last podcast, Martini is now.
Yeah, Martini have walked out on him. They've got the only saving grace is the fact they've got Paddy Lowe, who obviously does have a lot of expertise from both McLaren and Mercedes. But can one person lift up a team? Obviously, Ross Brawn's done it, but
we've seen in the past there's definitely those figureheads, the head engineers that can steer the team the right way. And this is Paddy's first car that he's really had influence over, and you can see that in the way they designed it. They've copied a lot of stuff from Merc and Ferrari of last year. But, just copying the car one for one is not enough when the other teams are copying as well and doing their own upgrades on top of that, whereas Williams just had so much catching up to do from the very end of last year. So,
it'd be like chasing your own tail, isn't it? You copy off a car, but then that's upgraded by the time you've put your upgrades on.
Yeah.
So,
Williams
it's
just kind
difficult.
Also, in terms of any kind of sympathy and the good feel factor, it's just gone away now for like the last couple of years because it's just they
even
they feel
2012 they had a shit driver lineup.
I don't know about you guys. Do they feel very corporate now? They don't feel like homegrown Williams team.
They don't feel family based.
Like they talked about McLaren trying to nick some of their sponsors, and they're like, they'll have to fight very hard for them because we love our sponsors and they're a very integral part to how we run the business. And it's kind of sad in a way that it's so corporate. And obviously, it's a cash sport, so it's fair play. They have to be careful about sponsors, but it's just everything they do. It seems very, very corporate and kind of like, right, we're just trying to keep in the green here, and that's pretty much it.
They've lost that loving factor almost, just with the drivers that they've had, the way they've employed pay drivers, the way that everything's being running, employing people that have been kind of kicked out of teams, e.g. Rob Smedley, who came from Ferrari, followed Massa over. And now that they have lost Felipe Massa, I feel like they've lost everything. It feels like they've lost... Like, Massa was the only one, really, that was driving that team. And in fair play, I was watching the 2015 race in Silverstone, obviously when they were leading, and obviously then they had an okay race until the rain came, but wildly off topic. But they're just lacking something now. It's almost like we've forgotten what they were 20-25 years ago, and I don't really know. Can they go back forwards again? Because it feels like obviously Paddy Lowe, will it be an influence or not? It's not going to be a quick fix.
Not every
team that's been on a downward spiral ever since 2014. They were at the front and then they've just slumped.
Barring like Ferrari, I guess you could say. Not it's in any sport really. Like the big dogs, some of the usual suspects stay big the entire history of the sport. There's some teams where they rose, they were there for a while, but they can easily go back down. And Williams obviously did have to do a bit of a rise, and they had a really great, lots of great years. But I think it's just that period where they are just on a general slump, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like they almost need to recheck themselves in the way they're operating to kind of realise hang on, we're not in the same position anymore. Like, we have to be a bit more. Yeah, we can go for the we have to worry about the money, but also where's the ambition of like one of the drivers at least being a little bit exciting to pull off that amazing one race that you could do. Like, if there's a chance. You're not going to put, like, a little mini question to you two. If there's a chance where, like, they can pull off a madness strategy, are you really going to be that confident in Sorokin pulling that off? Or Stroll?
Yeah.
Like,
that's very true. They've just lost that. Yeah, they haven't got two people to lead them.
Williams have just... I wouldn't even say it's a downward slope because they had a bit of a resurgence in 2014-15, but...
Just due to the engine, though, really.
They never won a race, so you can't even call it resurgence. Maldonado won that one-off race in Spain 2012. But for me, going back to that past knowledge, they were really good. Not like they weren't brilliant, but they won races when they had a partnership with BMW from 2000 to 2005, and they had drivers like Montoya, Jenson Button, Ralf Schumacher, Nick Heidfeld, Mark Webber. Pitsonia, amongst others, and ever since the BMW deal finished in 2005, it's just slowly gone downhill until about 2013, and then obviously the regs came in 2014, and it sort of pushed them back up a bit. But even then, like I said, they didn't win a race, and Williams just really haven't been relevant since about 2004, which is when they last won a race. Like, if you take Maldonado aside from 2012. Their last season
that don't count.
Was Montoya, Brazil 2004, and like in that race, he broke that record. Like it was like Williams still made a statement on that day. Yeah. But that's it. They had a pole position in Austria with Massa 2014.
Do you think they've got a lack of leadership? With Frank probably forever having less and less input on the team. They haven't really got a leader.
They lack a lot of things.
Because the thing that's just popped into my head is...
Funnily enough...
Just general ambition, I think. They
lack character, funnily enough.
Yeah,
like ambition,
some more character.
Everything. Because
the thing that's just popped into my head is, how long have Williams been in the sport? Like, what were there a team before them, or were they a brand new team?
The thing is, with Williams, I'll give you an example of where they lack character. So, Pat Simmons left, or he wrapped up, and then also... who was the other guy left about 3-4 years ago? Who was like quite high up.
Oh, Sam Michael.
Yeah.
He went to McLaren.
And there was this other guy, this like older fella, who also was very important. I genuinely can't remember his name.
Well, Toto Wolff was there, wasn't he?
And I'm actually going to just quickly search.
He was there in a very weird role when he was at Williams. He was like
Toto Wolff and what's his name? He used to work for... Oh, no. Did he work for Ferrari or not? I think he went Ferrari...
No, there was
Williams.
an English guy who left about a couple of years ago whose name I cannot remember.
What about Aldo Costa? Wasn't he at McWilliams? Aldo Costa, sure. the mad Italian, because he was at Ferrari. Then he went Williams, now he's at Mercedes now. I know he was at Williams at one point. But either way, people have left. That's the main thing. But the thing that popped into my head was, if Williams continued to go on this downward spiral, could you see that team being bought out?
No, never. Because they're their own team, so I don't think not ever. I think you would...
If a manufacturer came along... like a
maybe,
Toyota
if it's a major car manufacturer, they won't get commercially bought out.
Oh, no, not like that.
Because they're literally like the definition of like a homegrown team, like starting from literally nothing, called Williams F1, and they built themselves up. So maybe if a manufacturer came in, but they would have to slump very, very low for that to happen.
If once is walking out on them,
like they would have to be in trouble of debt and like having to like default on themselves if they were to be bought out like that. And that's the thing, though. They're so corporate that they're clever enough not for that to happen. But I'm just kind of wondering when that spark is going to come through. Like, I don't know. Maybe it is, unfortunately, like a corporate thing of a spark of a new major sponsor that helps them really develop the car with the funding or whatever. But like, just waiting for that spark of that or a driver or just like a moment in the season. Like, apart from Baku, which was a mad race by itself anyway, so everyone had moments. They didn't have a memorable moment in my mind. All I'm thinking of is Baku. But apart from Baku, didn't have like a huge moment where it's like, oh shit, like oh god, like to like I don't know, spark like motivation for the team, morale. So.
Well, I'm just thinking sponsorship-wise. Obviously, Martini walked out when Martini came in 2014. They didn't have a sponsor since RBS walked out on them.
Patrick Head. That's the guy I was trying to think of.
Like the founder.
He was also, he was a very important figure who's also stepped away because I can't remember his name. It's bugging me. Like they've had a lot of people over the years who have just slowly walked away, and I just think they've got no one to really properly steer the ship. I mean, you got Claire, Frank doesn't really have any input anymore, Paddy, and then you're really like
you're struggling for number because I don't know what Rob
really
Smedley has.
Yeah.
Well, that was our mini talk on Williams. Went on quite a rant
another baffling team. There are many baffling teams in F1 right now.
I think Sauber's left. Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, they spent more time on the gravel than they did on track.
Lots of spinning.
It's a very unstable car, I think. They have some work to do, I think, on that stability.
There's two ways to read into that, though. One, it's not a good car. Two, they're pushing on the limit very early.
I think I'm going to go with number one, unfortunately. I'm going to have to go with number one.
I know Charles Leclerc was beating himself up quite a bit about putting in the gravel,
also that's one thing, though.
At the end of the
that's
day.
also one thing. Like, for all and I will admit, I've said about Charles Leclerc in the past, the one thing that he's not great at is setup work. That was always an issue for him in GP2. Was he would go, like, even especially in the last race, literally Abu Dhabi, the last one, he himself like put the team in the wrong direction for the setup, and they had to do so much work to get it back just before the race or during the race, like having to work around it. That's his one weakness. So I think they're relying basically on Ericsson's, funnily enough, his experience basically. Like, you joke, but that does actually count for a lot. That
he's been in the sport since 2014.
Yeah, and he's been with the team for like now a while, so he can actually steer them in the right direction. I think that's actually going to be a good dynamic for. They can lean on Ericsson for the setup in terms of like getting some validation. Because I just don't... I still think that's something that Charles... That's one of the things that, as a young driver, as a debutant, he's going to have to learn quite quick to make sure and try and suss up his setup
He needs
work.
a massively experienced person to be partnered alongside him. But I just thought about it. This is Ericsson's 5th season in Formula 1.
Yeah, he's been
started
around
off
for... to say, like, he's not, like, incredible, like, he's actually stuck around. He's stuck around a while, and he's like, he's had a few little moments here and there where, even I think all three of us at some point, like, okay, that's fair enough. He did a good job that race or something like that. So, but yeah, I think if it's a bad car, which I think it is, and I think Callum, you agreed. Tom, which one do you agree with? Like your statement, 1 or 2? If it's a bad car,
I'm not sure. That's why I brought it up. I don't know.
You don't know?
Because I wouldn't say it's unfortunate that they have a bad car, because I'd say it's more unfortunate if they're actually pushing them on the limit, to be honest. Because that would mean they've got nothing more to go for.
Would Sauber
even either way, actually, either way, that's going to be a tricky situation for Leclerc to navigate in terms of if you're not great at setup work anyway, and that's something you need to work on. To work on it on a bit of a dog of a car that's going a little bit wacky and a little bit booky on the exit when you're on the limit. It's not amazing. Like, also, that kind of backs up the point of I can't remember. Was it Vasseur? Is it?
Yeah, Vasseur,
yeah. He said like, don't expect a leap just because we have the current Ferrari engine, and I guess he was correct. Like, maybe.
No, but I mean the aero is
it can go quicker in a straight line. Yeah, but when it gets to the corner,
the difference with Alfa Romeo, even if they are last in Australia, which
I hope they're just closer. If they're last but closer,
I don't think they will be last. I genuinely think we're going to get a surprise, and I still think Williams might be in trouble. That's just my opinion, and force it in until they improve their car. But I think Sauber, the difference they have this year compared to the last, since 2013-ish, 2012, is they've got money to spend now. So if they need to fast track updates, really throw stuff onto the car, hopefully they can now. They've got some backing, so
Wasn't Sauber focusing on this year's car quite early? During last year.
I mean, it has. They have made a huge. That's the thing. Like, that's what I'm saying. Last but closer. They could have made it. I think they have made a huge step forward.
Yeah, their car's much better.
They had a long way back to come from. So
there's a lot of stuff on that car which no other car has. So they've gone for unique stuff on that car as well. There's a lot of things you don't see on others.
They have tried to be a bit inventive. So. But they were so far back, so it's kind of like I would still take solace in they're last, but they're just closer. Because last year, like, there was just so many panning aerial shots where you just saw the gap, and he was like, "This is just silly."
This is a Sauber. Look at the Rogue Sauber on its own.
Yeah,
it's chugging
like,
along.
So,
it's got unique stuff, but
paint some more red on it and it'll go a quarter of a second faster.
Yeah,
guaranteed.
definitely. Look. Racing stripes add like 5/10 off the lap. Yeah. So just paint the idea me and Tom had, paint the top red, leave it white on the sides. That's like its own racing stripe. You're going to gain a second right there. Job done.
Tell that one to Williams.
Racing stripes are fast.
Job done. 200 IQ strategy, nothing but. All right.
Well, Williams has been trying to run this Martini racing stripe since 2014.
Nah, it's a dead stripe though. It's dead stripe.
Dead stripe.
Yeah. It needs a new stripe.
The thing is, that stripe is from 2014. It's just being recycled from 2014.
Exactly.
Only
new stripes, okay? It's 2018.
Yeah.
New stripes every year, okay? Don't be boring like that, okay?
I love it.
I think on that note, I think you can tell we stopped the serious talk, and I think we kind of wrap it up maybe. So the next podcast is going to be the Australia preview, wrapping up any bits and bobs of news, and then obviously we'll do our predictions and whatnot. But I think that's going to be it. Are there any topics, lads? Do we have any last?
I was going to mention the safety car stuff, but I'd probably leave that till next one.
Yeah, we can keep it in there for next one if we need to fill some time.
Yeah.
Possible podcast in the next Q&A. Possible Q&A in the next podcast. That's the English I was looking for. Maybe. If we need to fill some time,
maybe we'll see. We'll see what kind of news comes up.
Get some questions in before the season starts.
If F1's a little bit dead for news this next week, then you'll see it on our Twitter. We'll tweet about it.
We do want to try and get some more Q&As maybe this year compared to last year. Maybe try and get a bit more of a interaction going along.
Yeah. But that's been episode number 74. Again, if you are new around here, do get subscribed to this channel for the podcast. Check out these two, links in the description. Twitter, always on our screen. Also, again, like with the audio, I mean, obviously, if you got this far, I'm hoping you would have already made that decision by yourself, but you can check us out on SoundCloud and iTunes, Pitlane Podcast. It's been really good response on the audio. The amount of
Even on SoundCloud, yeah.
The amount of
really
people
good.
listening on SoundCloud has been really, really high. And also loving the feedback in terms of anyone who has got it on iTunes. In terms of like you're thankful for that. Good, thank you for telling us.
Give us a rating.
Okay, you didn't even be so creepy about it, Jesus. But yeah, no, it's been really good, positive response, and I'm glad that we got that finally kind of done dust in terms of the iTunes stuff. So yeah, guys, if you have enjoyed this one, hit that like button. Let us know what you thought in the comments below, as always. And I guess we'll see you in the next one for the Australia preview, the official start of the race.
Oh my God, guys, it's less than 2 weeks.
Don't not just yet. Don't not just yet. Okay. But yeah, we'll see you guys then. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.